What's up, everyone? Scott the TroutHammer here, and I've got another educational video for you. So this is something I probably should have done a long time ago. It's something I really think every fisherman should do in some of their first fishing videos, and I really didn't think about doing it until now, but is teaching you guys how to tie effective fishing knots. So just for the sake of visualization, so it's easier to see, I've got a piece of metal that I just twisted to resemble a hook, and I'm using some paracord that I'll use to mimic fishing line. Again, I'm just using those for to better see how you tie the knots, and also so I'm not using like real tiny line, tiny hooks right in front of the camera. It'd be a lot harder to see. This is going to be a lot easier to see. So I'm going to show you 5 fishing knots that I think every fisherman should know how to tie. These are quick knots. They're easy to tie. They're strong knots. They work in almost every situation. I'll break down good times to use some of these fishing knots, what type of line to use them on, what type of line you shouldn't use some of these knots on. So I guess we should start with the simplest, and that would be the Uni Knot. So the Uni Knot is just short for like uniform knot. It's because that's how the knot looks once it's actually fastened onto your hook or swivel or whatever rig you're using. So you take your hook, take your line, go through the eye of the hook, and bring your line back toward your rod. Then what you want to do is you want to make a loop with your line on top. So you take the line and you form a loop like that. You take the tag end, you wrap it around your main line and into the loop a number of times, and the number of times really depends more on the strength of the line. If you're using lighter line, you'd want to use more loops to make the knot stronger. If you're using heavier line, you would need fewer loops to make the knot stronger. So for example, I mostly use anywhere between 6 to 20 pound mono or copolymer or fluorocarbon line. On a 6 pound line, I'd wrap this through the loop maybe 7 or 8 times. On 20 pound line, I do it maybe 3 to 5 times. You really don't need a lot to make the knot strong. But by the time you get done looping your tag end through the loop and the main line, it's going to look something like this. And then you grab onto the tag end and you sort of pull the knot tight and against, or also pull on your main line. Now, if you're making this knot with copolymer, monofilament, or fluorocarbon line, what you want to do is you want to get the line wet, because the friction will damage the line and will weaken the knot and weaken the strength of the line, and you could lose your lure or lose a fish a lot more frequently that way. So like what I do usually is I just wet the knot with my tongue. So you pull that tight, and then you pull your main line, keeping the tag end a little tight, and tighten it up right up against that. You cut your tag end, and that is how you tie a Uni Knot. And the Uni Knot works great for pretty much any class of line you use, any size of line you use. It is probably the most universal, beneficial fishing line or fishing knot you could use. So the next knot I'll teach you how to tie is the improved clinch knot. And this is honestly probably the second strongest knot you can make with your fishing line. It works for, again, all classes of lines. It works for monofilament, copolymers, braid, fluorocarbon, and is probably the one knot I recommend most for fluorocarbon for the strength of the knot, and also the way fluorocarbon is made and how knots can treat fluorocarbon. So what you want to do is, once again, take your hook, take your line, and go through the eye of the hook. And you want to pull your line back and give yourself plenty of room to work with this knot, because what you're going to do is you're going to just wrap your tag end around your main line a number of times. Again, number of times you do that depends on the strength of the line you're working with. Then what you want to do is you want to take your main line, and you see that first loop where your line goes through the hook. You want to take that tag end and go through that loop. So at this point, the knot's going to look like this. So you have your tag end wrapped around your main line a number of times, and then you go from this end all the way back through that first loop. Then you take your tag end, pulling it through that first loop, and go through that big loop that you made, going through that first loop. And again, you want to wet the line when you go to tighten this knot down. And what you want to do is pull equally on your tag end and your main line to keep it tight. And what it's going to do is the line is going to wrap and clinch around itself, and there's no way that knot is coming undone. That's why they call it the improved clinch knot. So next knot we'll look at is the Palomar knot. So this is sort of the bread and butter of bass fishermen and anyone who wants to tie a quick, super strong knot. Super useful, lots of applications for the Palomar knot. However, the nature of the Palomar knot and how it's tied isn't very effective on fluorocarbon. It actually does break more often with fluorocarbon, but it's also probably the best knot you could use for either monofilament or braided line. So it's different than any other knot in that what you're going to do, you're going to take your hook and you're going to take your line and fold it over on itself to start out with. Then you're going to take that folded point, and that is what you're going to put through the eye of your hook, swivel, whatever you're using. And you tend to use a lot of line making a Palomar knot because this is what you have to do. Give yourself plenty of room to work with and tie an overhand knot with that loop just like that, keeping the tag end out. Then you take that loop that you made with the overhand knot and you bring your hook or your swivel, whatever you're tying your Palomar knot onto, through that loop so it goes over it, and have everything back on the eye of your hook or your swivel and tighten it down. Yep, there we go. And that's how the Palomar knot is going to look. Now, one of the reasons why the Palomar knot is so strong is because the Palomar knot just constantly tightens in on itself. So for lines like braided line, this is a phenomenal knot. This is an indestructible knot on braided line. And one of the biggest benefits is you're sort of double covered on your hook or your swivel, whatever's connecting your line. You have two loops of line going around that eye or going through that eye than you would with any other knot. Now, one of the things a lot of people get wrong when they tie the Palomar knot is they pull the tag end a little bit and they try to really horse down on the main line. Actually, with the Palomar knot, you want to switch that around. You want to lightly tighten your main line, and your tag end is the one you really want to pull tight, and then clip your tag end, and then you have yourself a Palomar knot. Now, the next knot I'll show you how to tie is a snell knot, and this is the kind of knot that you use to attach a hook to your main line directly. So there's two ways you can tie a snell knot, actually, and either way is fine. Either way does pretty much the exact same thing. There's a sort of a quick way you could tie your snell knot if you already have leader that is tied onto your line that you can't do one way, or if you have an open end on the other. So if you have just leader, free leader that you could use, here's one way you can tie a snell knot. So you take your hook, take your main line, and you pass through the eye of the hook, and you keep the line parallel to the shank of the hook. Then what you want to do is you want to take your main line, wrap it around the shank of the hook a number of times. Again, usually this depends on the strength of the line you're using, and then sort of once over all of those loops, then you take the end of your main line that is on the other end that you're going to attach to a swivel, or you're going to attach to your backing line. If this is a leader, it's what you'd attach to your main line, and you bring that through the eye of the hook, pull your whole leader through so it look like that, and then what you want to do is just tighten that up real hard, clip off your tag end, and that is an easy way how you snell your line onto a hook or onto sort of like a nail rig, whatever you would use for this sort of fishing application. And that snell knot, I mean, it looks pretty simple the way it's done, but trust me, that is not coming undone. Now, the alternative to the snell knot, and this is if you have your line attached already to your main line, attached to a swivel, whatever rigging you have set up, and you only have this end of your line to work with. You can still snell your line onto your hook with this way. So you take the end of your line, go through the eye of your hook, and you want to pull this through, and you want to make a loop on this end. You don't want to make a loop like you would with a Uni Knot. All you want to do is hold it so you still have a loop. And you bring your line over the shank of the hook, again, a number of times depending on the strength of your line. So it'll look like that. Then you take the end of your line and you go through that loop you saved, and then pull your line tight through the eye, clip off your tag end, and you have what in my mind is actually a stronger version of that snell knot, but the other way is just as good and a lot easier to tie. It's sort of an idiot-proof knot, and this one is just a little bit stronger, a little bit harder to tie, but again, situationally, depending on what you have, there's another version of the snell knot. And the last knot I'll show you how to tie is one of my favorite knots. It's very overlooked because of the way the knot's tied. Not a lot of people think this knot's very valuable, but there are so many applications for this knot, and that's a surgeon's loop knot. So again, just like the snell knot, there's two ways you can go about this. One way is just take your line, fold it in half, and tie an overhand knot with the line, making a loop. So then you could cut your tag end. Then with this end, you can make as many of these as you want on your line to set up your rigging, even like, you know, different parts of your line. So you can like put a hook here, weight here, and you have a drop shot rig, or you have an over-under rig if you make another knot like that, further up your leader. But what you do with the surgeon's loop knot is you take that whole loop, you go through the eye of your hook, and you bring that loop over your hook or swivel, however you're using this application. Bring this knot and all back through the eye of your hook, pull it to the end, and then pull it tight. Now that is a great way if you want to quickly switch sizes of hooks, sizes of weight, or switch different riggings. Like if you want to keep your main line with a line like this and you have a bunch of different leaders pre-tied with loops on the end or with swivels on the end, that is a great way to quickly change rigs and hook sizes. Now another way to tie a surgeon's loop knot is one that I use every time I fish for larger fish that I'm going to use a circle hook with, and it's because of the nature of the surgeon's loop knot. It's great for attaching the hook. So what you do is you take your line through, give yourself plenty of line to work with, and with the hook and your line, you make just a simple overhand knot. But unlike the Palomar knot, you don't want your overhand knot to tighten directly against your hook or swivel. You want your overhand knot to give your hook room to move around. So if you're using a lure that has a lot of back and forth movement that needs the freedom to move around instead of a rigid knot up against the ring that you tie onto your line, that's a great knot for giving your lure freedom to move around. And when you're using circle hooks in particular with the surgeon's loop knot, it gives the hook the freedom to move in the fish's mouth so that the hook sets itself exactly how a circle hook should. You want to see something? You want to know a secret? So, this is a knot that I made myself, and I only show people that I can trust with this knot. If you're a viewer of mine, I can trust you with this knot. So one of the things that makes fluorocarbon lines so great is its knot strength, but the Palomar knot, which is probably the strongest knot that exists, doesn't work so great on fluorocarbon line because of the nature of the fluorocarbon line. It has a tendency to tighten on itself until a point the line breaks. So I've found a knot, or I've made a knot that I use for fluorocarbon 100% of the time. I use fluorocarbon, this knot is yet to break. I've come to love this knot so much that I've used it for just about every hook, lure I've been using since I came up with this knot. I'll quit rambling, I'll just show you how to tie this knot. But little bonus content for you guys if you stayed watching through this video long enough. So here's what you do. Take your hook, take your line, and you go through the eye of your hook, and this one you need lots of room to work with as well. So this, what I do is I tie a snell knot on this side of the hook. So I'll grab my loop at the end where the hook is, and I'll make a loop here. Okay? Then, give myself a little more room to work with, make myself a loop there. Then I'll wrap my line, I'll wrap the tag in around both sets of line like that, again, a number of times based on the strength of line I'm using. Then I'll take that tag end and I'll put it through the eye of the hook again. Then I'll take the tag end and put it through the loop I made on the end like I would for a snell knot. And I'll cinch everything up tight and pull tight on the tag end as well. So I've just been calling this knot the TroutHammer knot. And as you can see, it looks like a marriage of the improved Clinch knot and the Palomar knot. So this does work on fluorocarbon and does not break off your fluorocarbon like the Palomar knot would. And it's stronger than the improved Clinch knot. I guess, try it out for yourself, see what you guys think, and definitely let me know if you guys like the knot or if you guys think you can improve the knot as well. I'm definitely open to the feedback. And there you have it, guys. There's 5 knots that I think every fisherman should know. I hope this video helps you guys. I hope it makes you a better fisherman. I know I've gone fishing with a lot of people and I'll tell them to tie a certain type of knot and they'll say they've never heard of that knot before, and I'm just like, you kind of should. What are you doing out here fishing if you don't know how to tie a Uni knot or an improved Clinch knot? But now you have this video to reference to learn from. Now each of these knots, really any knot, you want to practice a lot tying the knot. I've gone through, like, I've got a bunch of old line in my workshop, and when I was learning a new knot, I'd go through pretty much a whole spool of my old line trying to learn new knots, get them, get the muscle memory down on my fingers, get the technique down, the tying down to the point where I could use a knot effectively every time I wanted to tie one on. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer all your questions. If you guys had any observations and any feedback, please leave those in the comments below also. I'll be happy to respond to all the feedback. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, tips up, tight lines, have fun fishing.